We're gonna get started. Also, we did not plan that we were gonna sit here and then ironically our pictures are up there, so this all was not part of the plan. But thank you guys for joining us for this session, the power of collaboration to advance research. Really the goal here is to have a discussion among us, but also for you guys to kind of think about questions at the end when it comes to how can we collaborate among those who are community members, patient advocacy organizations, those who work in the biopharmaceutical industry. How do we collaborate to really push research forward and show that collaboration can, also provide success? But before we get there, I wanted to just do a quick introduction about myself, and then I'll pass it to my awesome rockstar panelists. So my name is Seth Rotberg. I'm the Senior Manager of Patient Advocacy and Engagement at Prilenia. We're a small biopharmaceutical company working in the HD space. But I've also been involved in HD as a patient advocate for over 16 years. My mom had HD for 17 years of my life, passed away about 10 years ago. So been involved for quite some time. And I'm based in the US, if you couldn't figure that out from my accent.
Yeah, hello from my side. My name is Michaela. I live in Germany. I'm also an HD family member. I get to know that HD is in my family when I was a teenager, and I lived at risk for about 20 years. Then I got tested negative, and from that point, that was a super gift to me for my life. And I decided to do more for the community, whatever I can. I get involved with the German Association, as well as with HDYO, which is doing some translations, HD bus translations, things like that, and also HD CAP and more. That's me.
Hi, my name is Barbara. I'm from Italy. I'm president and co-founder of LAIR Foundation, which stands for Italian League for Research on Huntington disease. My connection with HD is a professional connection. It's not, I'm not a family member. My brief story with HD is more or less like that. About 15 years ago, I met some HD family members. Until that time, I have never heard about HD, but knowing that families moved something inside me, because I thought it was, unacceptable that such a burden and such a complex disease was so unknown in my country. So I just decided to do something, and here I am.
Awesome. So, question to the audience. Can you raise your hand if you feel like getting involved in research is more for the future? Okay. We got a couple hands. Just curious. Now, to my fellow panelists, what's your take on that?
I understand those who think it is for the future, because research takes years and decades to get outcomes to come from the lab to a trial, to a treatment, or to at least an answer or to a question. So it seems that it's something a really, really far away future. But it is today. There is a lot going on in the labs. There are trials designed now. We have outcomes from future research trials that we can work on now, and we can use them to plan ahead. And this is something happening right now, and also trials are going on.
I totally agree with Michaela. What I think is that it's true that the research is for the future, but it's for a near future, a close future. Because, thanks to research, we know much more about HD. And so researchers and companies, pharma companies, now are able to design better focused clinical trials. So even though research requires time, we can go faster than it was in the past. And so this would be my comment.
So that being said, since we're at a young adult Congress, why should young adults get involved in research?
So in my opinion, at least for 3 reasons. First of all, because for what I have understood till now, clinical trials, the actual, the current and next to come clinical trials are designed are planned to be, to involve people at the very, very beginning of the disease, or even people who are not showing any symptoms. Because thanks to research, we know that some things in the brain or in the blood or in our body is changing, even though we cannot see them with our eyes. And so people who are in this kind of condition, it's actually young people, young adults. So young adults are the actual real target to the future is now clinical research. And also because, in my opinion, what is changing for your generation compared with the previous generation is that now we cannot talk only about cure, but about prevention. So the current clinical trials, hopefully, will help us not only to find a cure for the disease, but to prevent the onset. And so all you can do, like, can do this kind of contribution. Your parents or your grandparents did not have this possibility. So it's important, it's crucial, in my opinion, that young adults give a contribution now, in this very moment, historical moment, to research.
Yeah, to add on that, so we know that the HD gene mutation is there in your body right from the moment of right before your birth, already there. It is there, and it's doing something harm for you. And we don't want to wait that people get sick. We want to find the right spot, right sweet spot in time, to do something against it, to prevent it, to not start it, to stop progression. And therefore, we need young people and their perspectives and their ideas how to shape that.
And just to add to that, I think, young adults, it may sound intimidating to get involved in research, but I also think it's important to get involved in some capacity. And research isn't just thinking about interventional trials that involve these investigational medicines. It's also such as what HDYO is doing with their survey series, or participating in observational studies like Enroll HD. So I definitely think, it's important if you can, but also talk to others in the community, ask about their experiences, so you feel like you aren't doing it alone. Because I think that's something else that you may say, well, am I the only one doing this? But there's many people out there that are willing to participate, and I think it's up to you all just to think about, what can I do to help make a difference? But that being said, we also know that there's misconceptions in clinical trials and research participation, and I would ask the two of you maybe to touch upon, what are some of those misconceptions, but also on top of that, what can we do to collaborate as partners to clear up some of those as well?
Start. So, okay, in my experience, I can name a few misconceptions about research. For example, it's going to be dangerous. And it's not, because the very first thing which counts is your safety. So safety is the key word in clinical trials, observational or interventional. Another misconception is, every trial fails, so why should I spend my time in a clinical trial? Every HD trial fails. But we need to pay attention, what does the word failure means? Even though a clinical trial does not meet its primary endpoint, it does not mean that it's a failure, because even if the expectation of a clinical trial is not like we would have hoped, at the end of the story, we have learned something new, and so researcher will know that pathway is not the good one, and so they will concentrate their efforts somewhere else. Another couple of things that can come to my mind is that, for example, it's too expensive, so I don't have enough money to participate to all these visits, to travel so much, etc. But it's not true. It's true it is expensive, but you will be reimbursed. So participants in clinical trials are always reimbursed about the expenses, travel, accommodation, meals, etc. Another thing, for example, is about placebo. I don't want to get placebo. I want to get the drug. So what if I get placebo? But again, no clinical trial is going to be really effective without placebo. So we need to have the comparison. So what maybe I can be useful to remind in this context is that even if there are participants in a trial who are going to get placebo, usually when a clinical trial ends, there is always an open label extension, it's called. So all participants in the trial will get the drug, the experimental drug, at the end of the trial. So it's just a matter of time. And of course, if the trial will succeed, participants can have the possibility to get the drug before others, of course. So I will stop here. I have others, but I don't want to say. There are a lot of misconceptions.
So I totally echo what you said, Barbara. And so just in addition to that, it's just that young people, all our participants, don't want to be a test subject. And that's not what it is. So study designs are there. They are highly regulated. And a lot of people look it up before it starts, and also people want to know if something went wrong, so safety is first. And all the participants in there and the partners around should have a close eye on that, what happens with the study participant, and nobody is a test subject in there. That's the one point. And I have one more, it's about that I get blocked. So when I'm taking part in the one trial, that I might get blocked for another one because I have this drug inside of me. And what happens then if the first one fails and I have it inside me, and then the next one is coming up? What to do then? And this is something that I can only really encourage those of you to get informed. What is the first trial about the other trials that are around? There is a choice. Nobody is forced to go to the trial, but for sure, please get informed, make your own decision, talk to the doctors, ask your questions, raise your concerns, and then make your decision. If you want to go, it could be that you miss an opportunity to go for the first trial, you fit to get that criteria, and might be too late for the next one. We don't know, but please raise your questions and concerns, and let's have a discussion on that.
And those are all very good ones, and we discussed there's a lot of misconceptions. I think one of the big things that I've seen is in order to work together to remove or just to improve that, clear it up, I would say, communication is important. So, working alongside the community, working alongside the patient advocacy groups to communicate properly, to message, to say, here's what we're doing, here's what we're trying to do. But I also would say transparency, right? Being transparent is going to be very important. And also from the community side, don't be afraid to ask questions, right? It's saying ask questions to your patient advocacy organization, ask questions to the companies, right? There's a bunch of us out there with exhibit tables. I promise we don't bite. So, come by, ask questions, we'll have a conversation, and we'll answer what we're able to. And if we aren't able to, we'll get back to you. And I think that's something important just to realize is transparency is important to build a strong relationship. But I don't know if either of you have anything additional about ways to work together to kind of clear up some of these misconceptions. Anything else you want to add?
On the misconceptions?
On how to work together?
So working together, to my understanding, has to be on eye level. That's super important that it's equal partnership on both sides. It's bi-directional, not only giving from the one side to the other side. It should be both directional, that both sides benefit from that. And to my understanding, it should also take into account that HD has no borders. It's global disease. And as we are here on a lucky side of life in the European countries, there are other countries in the world that we also should consider in thinking of when we start something.
I do want to ask, just being mindful of some time, because I want to leave some time for the audience to ask any questions, but in what ways have either of you seen a successful collaboration between the pharmaceutical space, community members, patient advocacy groups? Do you have any success stories?
Yeah, I can share some example from our experience. I just want, if I may, just add one thing to your very good point about transparency. I think that a good collaboration is, of course, about that transparency, but it is also about the right mindset. What I want to say is that, as also Michaela mentioned, people who are going to collaborate, either if they are advocacy organizations, single patients, industries, researchers, clinicians, all of them needs to remind that they are worthy, that their point of view counts. It's equally important to the others. Because sometimes, especially patients, they feel less important than the physician or the pharma, etc. But this asymmetry is wrong. So all the people around the table are equally important. That I want to underline. Your age doesn't count. Your experience, your job doesn't count. I mean, when we talk about collaboration in HD, all people involved are experts of the same disease, simply from different points of view, but all the points of view matters. This was something I would like to underline. Yes, so we have example of successful collaboration with companies. For example, one thing which is really, really important is the support that pharma companies gave to our annual conference on HD. Why is this? Because the annual conference that we organize in Italy is the only conference in Italian where we try to explain HD clinical trials results, where we share results about clinical trials. And company support is really important, not only from a financial point of view, but because there is a real partnership. They come to us virtually or in person and they ask questions, ask all questions, because all questions are equally important, and try to explain everything. So this is a good, in my opinion, it's very important because we are all in the same, we have all the same object in that situation. We also realize, for example, a video. There is an experience with Prilenia that has a lot of success in our country, because we realized that a video where the actor of this video was a young lady who, based on her own experience, encouraged other young people to participate in the research. So the young people has been ambassador of herself. So there was not a doctor or an adult saying, you have to do it in a paternalistic way, but it was a peer communication, and it was very, very effective in that situation. Or another example, we explained through webinars in a couple of situations the rationale of a clinical trial. This was for one specific clinical trial, and we had more than 1,000 views of this webinar. So this means that people need to know and to understand research, because research languages is not that easy, and we know that because this morning we had the glossary. So it is important that every people involved know exactly what we are talking about. And another example, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the compassionate use of experimental drug, but it's something, I'm not going to talk about this, but because it is not, so many people are familiar with this topic, we explained what does it mean to get a drug in a compassionate use program, and all these things we did in partnership with companies. So we identified together, let's say, an unmet need, and we together figured out how to respond to that unmet need in equal and transparent conversations.
Yeah, one thing that comes to my mind is the advisory boards that we offer as a community, so with HDCOPE or HDCAP, so that pharmaceutical companies come there and ask all their questions that they have, that we from community share our stories, and it's very powerful to share that stories and to observe the situation when pharmaceutical companies hear these stories, how they react or how they are touched by that. That's super important, and then answer all their questions that they have. It seems to be basic for us, but it can avoid misunderstandings, and it's very important to have these conversations. And in these kind of ad boards, and other examples that we do on a national level, we did in Germany, is, for example, we're doing a lot of awareness activities. So, for example, we had an awareness video for May that we put together out of several stories put together and share that also on the national side as well as on the pharmaceutical, on their website and sources to reach out to people. And we also had opportunities to do market research together with pharmaceutical companies. It's also nice to collect the answers from different countries, for example, and we compare them and comment on them. And what we also did afterwards, it was to publish them. So we wrote an article then and made it available for others to learn from that as well, not to keep it with us, with this one pharmaceutical company, to share it with others as well. And these were some of our examples.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot of ways to collaborate. I think the big thing is to collaborate from the beginning, right? And making sure that we're working together throughout drug development, throughout clinical research, because it's important to get feedback on things such as the trial design, and even when you're thinking about clinical trial recruitment, the materials, making sure that, you know, patients and their care partners understand the informed consent, right? The 30 plus pages, 40 plus pages. 25. I mean, it's a lot, right? But working alongside the community, saying, okay, does this resonate? Does this make sense? And again, and just making sure that we're, you know, teaming up to make sure that we are successful at the end of the day. So I think it is important to collaborate, and those examples are just several of many ways to do that. But, you know, our company and others that I'm aware of, you know, have worked with HD Cope, HD Cab, to really get feedback, to make sure that we're, you know, listening, learning, and then implementing the feedback, right? It's one thing to listen, it's another thing to then implement it and making sure that we're doing what we need to do to, you know, move things forward. What's kind of one message you want, I'm going to say, not just anyone in general who's listening, to take away from this discussion?
So my message is you have more power than you might think of. The experience of living in a family with Huntington disease is a superpower. And this is knowledge is something you can use to shape the future of HD, because your voice matters.
May I share two messages instead of one? But I'm very quick. So my first message is don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to ask, never. And don't be afraid to engage, because you are in a safe environment. And second message is please try to stay wealthy. I mean, in order to prevent your brain health, you absolutely need to have healthy behaviors. I'm talking about physical exercise. Don't smoke. Don't exaggerate with alcohol. Don't misunderstand me. I don't want to give a preach to you that are younger than me, but it's not because Barbara thinks that is something to do. It's because all a community of neurologists say that it's important in order to prevent HD, also to have healthy and wealthy way of living. So stay wealthy and don't be afraid.
Awesome. Well, thank you, too. I would love to open it up for any follow-up questions.
Will you do me a favor and explain the difference between, this was mentioned in the beginning, between cure and prevention, and why they're differentiated?
You want me? I'll let you. I mean, for my personal thoughts, like, I think prevention, right, is trying to treat as early as possible. Now, that being said, right, it might mean also you may get symptoms much later versus a cure, right? Our mindset, and you know, I remember hearing about it when I first learned about HD, about just thinking about a cure. That means like you're never going to get any symptoms. You're going to be fine as soon as, you know, you're supposed to get the potential symptoms. But that's the way I see it. Is, you know, if we treat as early as possible, preventative. Cure, maybe it's also reversing it if you were symptomatic. Is that what you were thinking too, Barbara?
The cure is something that happens after you show your symptoms. So to manage the symptoms. Prevention is something that hopefully we will have the possibility to have, will allow us to avoid that you can have symptoms. So it's before symptoms.
Nothing.
Any other questions? I know it's been a long day. Is everyone excited for tonight at least? I do have one last question for the two of you then. Why is it important for companies to collaborate with patient organizations, community members, researchers?
So, because if you don't collaborate with us, we will miss an important piece of the puzzle. I mean, it's absolutely necessary that that patient organizations and pharma industry collaborate, because what patient organization can add to the knowledge of pharma industry is what it's happening every day in your life between one visit and another. Okay, so this is something that only people directly involved can know. And so pharma companies have not the possibility to gain this information. They can gain them only from the population, from the HD involved people. And just one last thing I want to add. I think it's impossible nowadays to work without collaborating, to work in research without collaboration. And this is something that is very clear also in the mind of the regulatory authorities, both at European level and also at national level. For example, in our country, now our national regulatory authority opened up an initiative which is called IFA Listen. So it means IFA wants to listen the points of view of advocacy organization in rare diseases, but not only. So when a pharma industry go to the regulatory authorities saying, I think that my drug is going to work, so why don't you think that maybe it can be commercialized? The agency will say, okay, but please let me also ask the patients. So our points of view are equally important, as I said before, and so the important thing is that, as you said correctly, Seth, that we start building our collaboration since the very beginning. It should be a process, not just a single initiative.
So my answer why it's important, because there is no treatment for Huntington disease yet at the moment to avoid it, to stop the progress. And therefore we need pharmaceutical companies and all other players in the field as well. We need the families, the researchers, the regulatory bodies as well, to all do it together, hand in hand. And nobody is alone in that field, and we are stronger together, and therefore it's important to collaborate.
Well, thank you guys. And thank you guys for joining.
Thank you, Seth, for leading this session.
This was a collaborative effort. See what I did there?
Yes, absolutely.